In this video, 5 cruel truths about beauty they don't want you to know. We're not here to tell you how to become more beautiful. We're here to uncover why you ever felt you weren't, because somewhere along the way, you were taught to measure your worth in reflections and filters, in flaws and fixes. But beauty isn't a competition, it's a construct. And today we're breaking it open. You deserve to feel powerful in the skin you already live in. No more shrinking, no more chasing. It's time to see the truth, and finally see yourself clearly. If you've ever looked in the mirror and felt an ache you couldn't quite name, a quiet dissatisfaction with your face, your body, your image, it wasn't born from your reflection. It was planted, shaped, manufactured. From the moment we are old enough to recognize ourselves, we are told, sometimes subtly, sometimes directly, what beauty should look like. These messages don't come from nature, they come from outside forces, media, advertising, culture, social conditioning. And every decade, the standard shifts. Thin becomes curvy, curvy becomes toned, pale becomes tanned, natural becomes artificial. And the message beneath every shift is the same: you are not enough yet. That is not an accident, it is design. Beauty standards have always been less about aesthetics and more about control. When people, especially women, are taught that their value lies in their appearance, they spend their lives chasing that value instead of questioning the structure that defines it. They invest their time, money, energy, and self-esteem into reaching a moving target. And when they get close, the standard moves again. That is the cruelty of it. It is always just out of reach. We're made to believe that certain features, clear skin, symmetrical faces, tiny waists, sharp cheekbones, are simply what's attractive. But those preferences didn't emerge from nature. They were curated by industries that benefit from our insecurity. From beauty brands to plastic surgeons to billion-dollar corporations, an entire economy thrives off your belief that you are flawed. If you believed you were already enough, you wouldn't buy half the things they sell. So what happens instead? You're raised watching commercials with airbrushed models. You scroll past influencers whose skin looks glassy, whose bodies appear sculpted by algorithm, and your brain, without even meaning to, starts to believe that's normal, that's real, that's beautiful, and are not. What they don't tell you is that those images are filtered, staged, retouched. They've gone through editors, lighting, software, angles, surgery. They've been built to look effortless, but nothing about them is effortless at all. And yet we internalize them as reality. This is how beauty standards are manufactured, not through facts or science, but through repetition, through exposure. The more you see something, the more you start to believe it's the truth. And when you don't match it, you assume something must be wrong with you. That's where striving comes in. You start to chase. You contour your face to change its shape. You spend hours researching skin routines, weight loss hacks, body enhancements. You starve, restrict, inject again. Not always because you want to, but because deep down you've been told that being beautiful is the ticket to worth, love, safety. But here's the truth that changes everything: the standard is not real, it's not fixed, it was created, and what is created can be questioned. Think about it: if beauty were truly objective, would it vary so drastically across cultures, eras, and trends? Would the ideal body shape have changed over time from soft and round to dangerously thin to surgically enhanced curves? Would entire industries exist solely to keep you chasing something new each year? It's not your face that keeps changing, it's the finish line. And what happens when we spend our lives chasing a beauty standard that was never ours to begin with? We lose touch with what's real. We forget how to appreciate what is natural, what is human, That's the damage that's hard to measure. Not just the money spent, but the years of silence. The moments when you didn't speak up because you didn't feel pretty enough. The relationships you settled for because you thought you had to. The dreams you delayed, the risks you didn't take. The photos you deleted. The life you edited to seem smaller, more agreeable, more aesthetic.
None of it was about beauty. All of it was about control. Because when you're busy managing how you look, you're not questioning who decided how you should look. And that's where the power lies. In awareness, because once you realize that beauty standards were manufactured to keep you striving, you get to choose something else. You get to opt out of the game entirely. You begin to ask, what do I find beautiful? Who benefits when I feel ugly? What would I do with my life if I stopped chasing approval? These are not just personal questions. They are acts of rebellion, because every time you decide to honor your natural self, to love what they told you to hide, to stop chasing, and start owning. You're doing more than healing. You're dismantling a system that was never designed to serve you. You were never meant to be flawless. You were meant to be free. And that freedom begins the moment you stop striving for their standard and start returning to your own. If the beauty industry truly wanted you to feel confident, it would go out of business. That's a harsh truth most people never stop to consider. We're taught to believe that beauty products, treatments, and trends are tools of empowerment, that they help us express ourselves, that they boost our self-esteem. But when you look closely, quietly, honestly, you'll start to see something else. They don't sell confidence. They sell the idea of confidence tied to products, procedures, and promises that keep changing just as you're about to catch up. Confidence in its pure form is internal. It's knowing you are whole, worthy, and enough as you are. But a confident person doesn't endlessly consume. A confident person doesn't feel the need to buy another cream, another filler, another fix. And that's the problem, from the industry's perspective. Because when you feel secure in yourself, you stop chasing external validation. You stop needing the illusion of better. You stop fueling a system built entirely on one dangerous idea, that you're not quite there yet. And that's how the beauty industry survives, by convincing you that confidence is a product, that worth is something you earn, that beauty is something just a little outside your reach, and they will always have something new to offer you, just in case you're still feeling not enough. The language they use is subtle, but effective, flawless, anti-aging, perfecting, correcting. These words don't sound aggressive, but they carry a quiet violence. They suggest you have flaw, that aging is wrong, that your current state is something that needs to be corrected. Every cream that promises to erase a wrinkle is selling you a fantasy that youth equals value, and your natural progression through time is a mistake. Every weight loss ad, every body sculpting app, every airbrushed photo is reinforcing the same unspoken message: who you are is not enough. And when you internalize that message, even unknowingly, the chase begins. You start to spend not just money, but attention, energy, emotion. You start to compare yourself to filtered versions of others. You start to pick apart your own reflection, and each time you do, the industry wins. Not because it has made you feel beautiful, but because it has made you feel dependent. And that dependence isn't accidental, it's engineered. The beauty industry understands psychology, it understands insecurity, it understands human behavior, particularly in women who have been conditioned from a young age to associate value with appearance. And it exploits that understanding through imagery, repetition, and manipulation. Look at how trends change. One year, the ideal lip is thin and sharp. The next, it's plump and overfilled. One season favors high cheekbones. The next, a rounder face. What you're chasing isn't beauty, it's a moving target. And just when you begin to feel close to the standard, because a customer who's finally satisfied is no longer profitable. This creates a cycle: desire, purchase, temporary relief, new insecurity, new desire. And it's not just individual brands it's the entire ecosystem, from fashion magazines, to influencers, to cosmetic companies, to digital platforms. They all play a role in keeping you slightly uncomfortable in your own skin. Not devastated, just unsettled. Not broken, just not quite enough. Because when you're always striving, you're always buying. And let's be clear, there is nothing inherently wrong with makeup, skincare, or body care. Adorning yourself can be beautiful, enhancing your features can be joyful, but the problem arises when those acts are rooted in fear. When your self-worth hinges on how closely you match a curated, ever-changing ideal. Ask yourself, if no one were watching, would you still do all of this? Would you contour your face if beauty weren't praised? Would you change your hair, your body if no one ever validated you for it? Most of us don't realize how much of our beauty routine is not for self-expression, but for self-correction. And that correction only exists because we were first taught that something was wrong. That's the system at play. Create the problem, then sell the solution. And the cruelest part, most of the insecurity you feel was planted by the same system now offering to fix it. It's a cycle that feeds on your self-doubt, but the moment you see it, the moment you recognize that the beauty industry doesn't profit from your confidence, but from your lack of it, you begin to reclaim your power. You begin to question, to pause before purchasing, to ask yourself, is this about joy or is it about fear? Is this about me, or is it about approval? Is this rooted in truth, or in someone else's definition of worth? That's where confidence actually begins, not with a product, but with a decision, a quiet decision to stop outsourcing your value to companies that never cared for your wholeness, only your loyalty. Because true confidence doesn't come from a shelf. It comes from seeing the system clearly and choosing yourself anyway. You don't wake up hating your face. You learn to, and in today's world, there's no teacher more persuasive or more invisible than social media. We scroll without thinking. We double tap images of glowing skin, snatched waists, luminous eyes, and sculpted perfection. We call it inspiration. We call it beauty, but what we're really doing is absorbing 1,000 unspoken standards without realizing it. Standards that were never real to begin with. The rise of social media filters and digital editing has completely reshaped how we perceive what's normal, what's desirable, and what's acceptable. It's no longer about seeing reality. It's about seeing the best possible version of a person after they've adjusted every flaw, softened every feature, and erased every mark of being human. This isn't just a trend, it's a psychological shift. Our minds are visual creatures. What we see repeatedly becomes familiar. What becomes familiar begins to feel like truth. And when the truth we're consuming has been filtered, edited, and distorted over and over again, our brains begin to believe that this is what people look like, that this is what we should look like, that anything less is failure. And that's where the distortion begins. Suddenly, your real face starts to feel foreign. The skin with texture, the nose that curves, the body that changes shape with light or movement. It begins to feel like a problem. Not because it is, but because it doesn't match what you see reflected on your screen all day long. What makes this especially dangerous is how subtle it is. Social media doesn't announce that a face is filtered. A person doesn't always admit they've edited their waist or brightened their eye. And because of that, comparison becomes cruel. You're comparing your raw, living, breathing self to someone's curated digital projection. You're standing in natural light while they pose in perfect angles, under studio bulbs, with algorithms smoothing their pores. But your brain doesn't differentiate, it just sees better. And you begin to wonder, why don't I look like that? What's even more painful is how this distortion begins to influence self-worth. People start to feel more confident in their filtered selfies than they do in real life. They prefer the version of themselves that isn't real, and eventually they begin to feel disconnected from their own face, like who they are is somehow disappointing. This creates an inner split, a quiet growing shame. You might notice it when you take a photo and instantly reach for the smoothing tool, or when you avoid posting altogether unless you've adjusted something, or when someone compliments your real appearance and you don't believe them, because in your mind you've already decided that the edited version is the better you. This is not vanity, this is conditioning, and it's happening globally, across age, gender, and background. Teenagers are requesting cosmetic surgery to look more like their filtered selfies. Adults are spending thousands trying to achieve what a filter gives them instantly. People are editing their memories, their moments, their very identities to match a standard that doesn't even exist. This distortion isn't just external, it's deeply internal. It affects how we perceive ourselves, how we show up in relationships, how we engage with the world. It creates performance where there should be presence. It creates pressure where there should be peace. And it robs us of something essential, the ability to see beauty in what's real. Social media has turned faces into canvases, bodies into brands. But what it hasn't told you is that you were never meant to be an image. You were meant to be a person. Messy, changing, textured, alive. With freckles and under-eye circles and skin that shifts with time. With expressions that can't be captured in a still frame. With a beauty that lives in motion, not perfection. And the more we internalize filtered standards, the more disconnected we become from our own humanity. We become afraid of aging, afraid of being seen without makeup, afraid of our real selves showing up on camera. But the truth is, your real face holds more life than any filter ever could. Because it carries your story. It shows where you've smiled, where you've cried, where you've lived. It holds the evidence that you are here. Not paused, not polished, but present. What we need is not better tools to edit ourselves, but more permission to exist as we are. That begins with awareness. It begins when you scroll and remind yourself, this isn't real. It begins when you resist the urge to over-edit and let your face breathe. It begins when you look in the mirror and decide this is not a problem to fix. This is a life I'm living. The distortion only has power when it goes unnoticed. But once you see it, once you name it, you can begin to pull away. And as you pull away, something quiet begins to return. A softness, a familiarity, a sense of self that's not defined by angles or apps, but by the way your presence makes people feel, by the way your eyes light up when you laugh, by the way you show up in the world, unfiltered and whole. That is real beauty, and it never needed editing to begin with. There's a kind of silence that follows most beauty routines. Not the quiet in the room, but the internal kind, the emotional weight we carry without language. Because while we talk openly about makeup tips, skincare secrets, diets, and transformations, what rarely gets spoken is the emotional cost behind the pursuit of beauty. Most people wouldn't call it pain. It doesn't look like pain. It looks like discipline, like effort, like self-improvement. But beneath it all, there's often something softer, more painful. Exhaustion, insecurity, fear of being unlovable in your natural form. From the outside, chasing beauty seems harmless, even empowering. But what no one tells you is how much it quietly asks you to give up, and it rarely asks all at once. It takes slowly, a bit of joy here, a bit of time there, then your energy, then your comfort, then your ability to simply exist without self-monitoring. You begin to plan your days around your appearance. You avoid camera, you scan rooms, wondering if you're being silently judged. You check your reflection, not for confidence but for flaws. And each of these small habits builds into a quiet emotional toll, because beneath the pursuit of beauty is often a fear that you are only as worthy as you appear, that if you stop striving, you will be forgotten, or worse, seen and not desired. It starts early. Maybe someone called you pretty when you were young, and it became part of your identity, or maybe no one did, and you've spent your life trying to prove you could. Either way, the pressure sets in. You become hyper-aware of how you are perceived. Compliments become currency, validation becomes oxygen, and your body becomes a project, always in progress, never quite complete. This is where the emotional cost hides, not in dramatic breakdowns, but in the daily rituals of self-doubt, in the constant need to ask yourself, do I look okay? Am I enough today? And what makes it more difficult is that the world rewards your efforts. You get praised when you lose weight, compliments when you wear more makeup, applause when you glow up, and with every reward comes reinforcement. Keep going, keep fixing, keep shrinking yourself to fit, but rarely does anyone ask what it costs you to stay in that cycle. No one sees the mental exhaustion of constantly evaluating your worth, or the panic that sets in when your skin breaks out, or your body changes, or your beauty starts to age. No one talks about the anxiety of being seen without preparation, the shame of not measuring up to your filtered reflection. You start to disconnect from your own body, not entirely, but enough. You start to view it from the outside, constantly imagining how others are seeing you. You live in performance. You become careful with how you sit, smile, speak, dress, not for comfort, but for and somewhere along the way, you forget what it felt like to simply be in your body without judgment, to move through the world without constant self-correction, to feel joy that isn't earned through beauty. The emotional toll deepens when you realize how much of your identity has been built around appearance, because then the stakes are high. If your value is tied to your looks, then aging becomes a threat, gaining weight becomes failure, letting yourself be seen as you are becomes terrifying. That kind of pressure doesn't just live in the mirror, it follows you everywhere. You might notice it in relationships too. You question whether someone loves you for who you are, or how you look. You overthink moments when you feel less put together. You feel panic at the idea of being ordinary, and often you feel alone in this because no one is saying it out loud, but many are feeling it just the same. That's the unseen part of the cost, the isolation. Everyone's performing beauty, but no one's talking about the stress. Everyone's striving, but pretending it's effortless. And when pain goes unspoken, it turns inward. You begin to think the problem is you, that you're the only one struggling, that other people must be handling it better. But the truth is, most people are quietly exhausted from chasing an ideal that keeps shifting. There is grief here too. Grief for the time lost, the peace traded, the memories missed because you didn't feel beautiful enough to show up. Grief for the younger self, who believed beauty would guarantee love, success, belonging, and who learned, often painfully, that it doesn't. This grief is not weak, it's sacred. It's an honest response to a system that taught you to value your reflection more than your reality. And the most healing thing you can do is begin to name it, to acknowledge the weight of what you've carried in silence, to realize that your exhaustion is valid, that your inner conflict is not vanity, it's survival. Because when you name the cost, you begin to reclaim the part of you that was lost to the performance. You begin to soften, to breathe deeper, to show up, not as an image, but as a person. And in doing so, you begin to return to yourself. We were never meant to live inside an image. But somewhere along the way, beauty stopped being an expression of self and became a performance for others. A performance shaped by invisible scripts, standards manufactured by industries that never truly cared for your well-being, only your obedience. The truth is, this system was never built to make you feel beautiful. It was built to keep you striving, and in that striving, something precious is lost. Your peace, your presence, your right to exist without self-monitoring, your ability to walk through the world without wondering how you're being seen. These beauty standards were never real. They were invented. The insecurity you carry was not born in you. It was planted. And the chase for perfection, it was always designed to keep you tired, distracted, and disconnected from your own power. But once you begin to see clearly, once you name the system, feel the grief and understand the emotional toll, you no longer belong to it. You begin to choose differently. You begin to question what you once called normal. You begin to return to the version of yourself who didn't see her body as a problem to solve, or her face as a flaw to edit. You were not born to be flawless. You were born to be whole. So let them keep selling perfection. Let them keep shifting the ideal. You don't have to buy back your worth. It was never theirs to price. You are already enough. You always have been. And now, you remember.